Hi. I'm just going to do a wee introduction into our next podcast, which you're about to see in the following slide. This is our week with Ashleigh, who runs Wombpower, which she will do a much better job of explaining exactly what it is that she does. But we found it really insightful for I don't know, women in general that struggle with their cycles and their periods. How much do you actually really think you know? I don't think I know anything. So yeah, she was such a fun and charismatic person to talk to, and so super insightful into what she's trying to do and teach us about our bodies. So please enjoy this next podcast that obviously is available on I can't speak, it's too early. All streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, obviously on YouTube, all the above. So please go and enjoy and like and subscribe. Bye.
Okay, fab. So welcome to the podcast, Ashleigh. Ashleigh is our third guest, and this is episode 5. So yeah, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, I am Ashleigh from Wombpower, and I feel like my business is many things, but predominantly sharing and teaching menstrual cycle awareness and women's empowerment, really. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell, I think.
Yeah, and you're based in Australia, aren't you?
Yeah, I actually started Wombpower when I was living in Edinburgh in 2019, but my husband and I have moved back to Australia last year. So now I'm operating out of Oz and doing in-person and online things. So I can kind of reach everybody in the world anyway.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the good things actually that came from COVID, is that you realised you can do a lot online and potentially reach more people, but being in person is also nice, especially with the kind of work that you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. I think after the last, 2.5 years or whatever, I felt really fatigued from being online so much. And as the only means or method of connection, for me, it's not enough. Like for some people, running a completely online business is fine. For me, I need to be with people. Like I need to feel people. I'm really intuitive and energetic, and I can feel you online, but it's not the same as being with you, and feeling you, like giving you a hug as well. So that just to me is a non-negotiable element of my business. So I can't just do online. Plus, when you do online, like I work as a speech pathologist as well, and so I've been working from home all day today and all day yesterday, and like you don't leave the house, or maybe go work at a cafe or something, but like you're just in the one space. Like, and I need something to mix it up, different environments. So yeah, being able to be with people is a non-negotiable element of Wombpower and my business, at least. So
Yeah, and I can imagine when it comes to what you specify in, you kind of need to be with that person to kind of understand them and what they're feeling, I suppose.
yeah, I think so. I mean, it depends on what capacity you're connecting with someone, because I run women's circles as well. And I find for myself, but for all the women that attend, being in person is definitely a better avenue to like opening and being in your heart and being vulnerable and being real. I think, coaching and, offering mentoring online, like one-to-one, it's all right, because there's a little bit of safety, I think, in having the screen there, and you're on the safety of your own home and they're in their own home. But yeah, I think it depends what you offer as to whether people feel. I do know I've run my online course, the deep dive, which is like the beginning of menstrual cycle awareness and everything you need to know to get started. And I think there's definitely an element of safety when you're talking about cycle awareness and something so personal, and which, for, let's face it, most of our lives has been taboo, which is what you guys love covering and offering and exposing and exploring. That element of safety of being behind your computer screen is nice when you're doing something like that. So yeah, it's something for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I suppose, like, our first question is, what is menstrual cycle awareness? I think is the
best topic in the world, but I'm biased. So menstrual cycle awareness, essentially, in a nutshell, is the process of tracking your menstrual cycle from the first day, which is day one of your period.
Mm.
And people would be surprised to know, we could dispel a myth right now, that your period isn't your cycle. Your period is just one phase or 1 week or however long it goes for. It's just one part of your cycle. So your period makes that part, and then there's all these other weeks, right? This was my light bulb moment all these years ago, that outside of your period, there are other weeks that mean something, that hold information, that contribute to your changing energy levels, contribute to your changes in your emotions and your, I suppose, feelings of like extroversion and introversion, right? So cycle awareness is this practice of getting to know all of these different phases. I talk about them as the inner seasons. So all these different inner seasons of your cycle, and how they contribute to making you, but how they also contribute to changing how you present and feel over the course of the entire cycle, from the first day of your bleed until the last day before you start bleeding again. That's one cycle. And I think the most powerful thing about this practice, but just about this information, I mean, it's wisdom, but we'll call it just basic information that everyone, like girls, women, menstruators, need to know, is that you change every day. Like, we're not constant beings in this just flat line of, wake up the same every single day. Like, we don't. And by understanding that you have this ebb and flow and this kind of rise and fall of your energy, your emotions, your capacity, then you can start to accept that you're actually not a failure for not being able to be the same every day and not being able to do the same things every single day, because your body's not designed for that. Your body is designed to change and ebb and flow. And when you learn that, there's so much permission and self-compassion that can come. But there's also superpowers that you can unlock. There's also all these great gifts of being an ever-changing woman and being, So in a nutshell, menstrual cycle awareness is the process of tracking all of that, and then syncing your life with your cycle. So planning appropriately around each season and how you're feeling, what activities might feel best. Like, okay, maybe we don't go out for a massive bender on day one of our bleed if we know it's coming. Or maybe we don't organise a 30th birthday party on day one. Maybe we save that for the inner summer, the ovulatory part of the cycle. So it's, you're starting to get a real sense of who you are, and then planning your life around that so you can set yourself up for success. And I really feel like at the end of the day, like, that's the whole purpose of it, like, is to feel like a successful woman or a successful being. Just you're nailing being you.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I guess, like, on a really basic level, Ayla and I have spoke about before, like, if we're going to the gym or going to run, sometimes we're like, oh, like, I was crap today, like, I can't lift anything. And then you get your period the next day and you're like, okay, that's why I couldn't lift anything.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And, that was my life, was because I've always had, like, I've got a quite a beautiful relationship with my body now, but I didn't used to. Like, I was just in that cycle of self-hatred, self-criticism, like feeling like a failure, feeling like my body was failing me because I couldn't be the same every day. And it wasn't until I, listened to this specific podcast about menstrual cycle awareness from one of my mentors, Claire Baker, where she described this concept of the seasons. the inner seasons and this ebb and flow of energy, that I thought, oh, maybe it's actually not my body failing me, but it's me failing my body because I'm trying to make myself do things that I'm not in a place for right now. Do you know, it's like a light bulb moment of, oh.
Yeah. Like switching the narrative sort of thing. Like,
Totally.
yeah.
When, you know, I mean, just I heard it then and I was like, wow. And it took me years to get around to it and actually accept the fact that, hey, this is okay, and completely overhaul and change your relationship and all the conditioning. I mean, we can't forget the conditioning that society has been responsible for, you know, making us think you need to be able to do it all the time. You know, that superwoman type archetype or expectation, like you have to be able to do everything all the time. But you know, like if you know this stuff, like once you learn this map, you know, this tool of menstrual cycle awareness, you can really start unpacking your relationship to yourself, and you can start unpacking your beliefs around what you should and shouldn't be able to do, or what's good or not good, or whether you're a failure or not a failure. You know, you can start unpacking all of this stuff and really start to get into connection with like who you really are and what's really true and real for you, not what you've been told about your body and your capacity.
And see, is it if you're on kind of like a contraception which gives you distorted periods, or if you just don't have a regular cycle, like how does that kind of fit into this model?
So when we talk about menstrual cycle awareness, we are talking about tracking a natural menstrual cycle. If you're on contraception, you can still use the moon because there's like 2 cycles. I mean, as women, we're just incredible and nothing is disconnected. Everything is set up we're all part of something, right? So if you don't have like a mini moon, which would be your cycle going on in your body, you can use the big moon, mama moon, because lo and behold, she cycles for about 28, 29 days every lunar cycle, which is roughly the average cycle. It doesn't mean that you have to be 28 or 29 days, but we link up, you know, for a reason. So if you're on contraception, you can use the energy and the phases of the moon to work with them, which I'm using now because I'm pregnant and I don't have a cycle. And they can represent your inner seasons. So it won't be experiencing, you know, because the moon does affect us, whether we're cycling naturally or not. It probably won't be, from my experience right now, it's nowhere near the same as having a natural menstrual cycle using the moon, but it's still such a beautiful structure and framework to go by. So you can, if you don't want to come off contraception, or if that's not part of your plan, but this sounds great, then yeah, you can use the moon, and it translates pretty well across.
So if like somebody listening was like, oh, this sounds good, like, see, I've never heard any of this before, and I kind of deliberately didn't want to read too much into it before speaking to you, because I was like, it's quite nice to learn like with people listening at the same time. But if you like want to get started and like delve into it, is that where someone like you would come in and really guide someone through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not really an emerging field anymore. Do you know, like cycle awareness has really kicked off, and there's a huge reclamation happening at the moment for women and their bodies and their cycles, and this real breaking of the taboo around the word period and having periods and talking about them, but also talking about how you're feeling in general. I mean, this is huge. Like, we're not pretending every day how we feel. Oh, we're great, when we're not. So yeah, to get started, connecting with someone like myself, someone who speaks to you, who you really resonate with. I think there's a couple of different approaches to menstrual cycle awareness. There's women like Elisa Vitti, and she talks all about the biochemistry of your menstrual cycle and how that actually then impacts your body and why you feel different. Whereas so that's like for sciencey people who are really into, I want to understand the processes going on in my body that are responsible for this ever-changing and constant ebb and flow. And then there's people like myself who are more emotional, energetic, intuitive people. And like I use the framework of the inner seasons, and my mentors and where I've trained is Red School, and that's their framework, this inner seasons framework. And to me, that makes the most sense because I connect with nature, and like we are nature, and her seasons are directly reflective of our seasons. So if you're looking for a way to understand yourself and your body and this changing flow and rhythm, then all you need to do is think about her seasons and what happens in wintertime, what happens in springtime, what happens in summer, what happens in autumn, because we have like a lifetime of experience of that. Doesn't mean we've necessarily honored the seasons ourselves as they happen. Like everyone wants many people want a perpetual summer.
Yeah.
Like you can start to think like, you know, the inner autumn and the season of autumn. Autumn outside, it gets cold, it gets dark, it gets windy. It's like it's a time to start coming inwards, like preparing for winter time. It's not quite winter yet, but we're on the way to winter. It's the same as our menstrual cycle, the inner autumn or the premenstruum. It's where we start stripping away, letting go. We become a little bit more emotional. We're a little bit more vulnerable. And we're preparing to come inwards. Maybe we have some anxiety. Maybe there are lots of things coming up for us because we're preparing to come inwards and we're preparing to bleed. So that's just like one example of how an inner season correlates with Mother Nature's season. So there's many ways that people can get started. I think the best place to start is by asking yourself, do I connect more with like the emotional energetics of my body, or do I want to know the science? And then you can find a person from there.
Cool. I guess in a way it's also like it's good to know for yourself, but also if you're in like some sort of relationship, whether it's committed or non-committed, to for that person to know what kind of season you're in. And because sometimes something that will annoy me and I'll go crazy, and then the next week I'm like, that was such an overreaction kind of thing.
Yeah, it's such a powerful tool. Interesting. My husband and I were talking about this the other day because we've worked with my cycle ever since we met. And it's been a really important part of our communication because, I mean, if you think like men generally are the same every day, they wake up the same every day. They have a hormonal cycle, but they more work with the circadian rhythm, you know, the 24-hour clock, whereas we have what Elisa Beatty calls the infradian rhythm. So that like month-long, 28-ish day-long cycle. So we change like they do, but over like a stretched out period of time. Yeah. So if you don't understand your body, how can you communicate to your partner that you're feeling a particular way? Or how can you let your partner know? How can you set your partner up for success? Like, don't approach me for sex. I'm literally about to bleed and I want you to get away from me. Or I am bleeding and I don't want to have sex with you. Or, hey, like, let's plan in some date nights because I'm ovulating and in my inner summer next week and I'll want to spend time with you. I'll most likely have a sex drive if everything is in balance. This would be a great time for us to connect in lots of different ways. Let's organize that. And what that gives your partner is a framework and permission and sets them up for success. Like, instead of approaching you at the wrong time, you know the language to use to help them understand when's a good time and when isn't. And then they start to learn the language of, you know, when to approach. Oh, you in your summer? Oh, so date night would be good tonight. Or are you in your winter? Do you want me to go out and just give you a few hours and I could maybe meet up with my friends? Just like, and it starts this open dialogue instead of A, expecting them to be mind readers. And B, it makes you responsible and accountable as well for your own moods and your own energy levels. Like we can't put that on somebody else. So to just interpret what we might need, like we need to know what we need and then we need to tell them that. So for us, it's been crucial. We actually made some videos on it. They're on my Instagram, Wombpower_, just chatting about our experiences of working with my cycle. And even now that I'm pregnant and pregnancy has been such a huge journey, but still my practice of cycle awareness has been crucial because each trimester has felt like a really stretched out inner season. And so I say to Angus, like, oh, babe, this is like trimester 2 was spring, summer, and it was amazing. There was just love every day. Like there was so much room for sex. Like there was just like this extended happy time that normally you only have for about a week. So I was like writing this 12-week, 14-weekish high, you know, of like, whoa. And then I crossed over into the 3rd trimester, which for me feels like an inner autumn time. And it's been far more emotional. I've been far more anxious, but I've been able to say that to him, like, oh, do you know what this trimester feels like? It feels like inner autumn. And he goes, oh, okay, right, yeah, I get it. I know what your inner autumns were like because we talked about them. So, you know, it puts you on the same page. It's such a valuable tool and framework for you and your partner to use.
Yeah, like builds like that kind of healthy communication wise, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And isn't that like the basis of relationships, whether they're romantic or not, is we need to have good communication skills. So yeah, I mean, even your friends, I encourage, you know, just like with anything taboo, it's taboo because we don't want to talk about it. But, you know, just this language around, I really encourage people to start talking about what cycle day they are, what season they're in, you know, how they're feeling, because that opens a dialogue either with a friend or a family member or whoever it is you're talking to either say, oh, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean for day 12? Or what do you mean when you're in a winter? Or it opens it up for them to be like, oh my God, me too. Or, oh, babe, I'm sorry. Like I'm in my inner summer, so I'm just flying and I can't relate, you know, but like I feel you, I know. And this framework, this tool is, yeah, for all our relationships. It's just brilliant in communication. Like I could have said to you guys when we were organizing this, if I was cycling myself like menstrually, I could have said, oh, you know what, like June the 1st until the 5th doesn't work for me because I'm bleeding then and I'm no good thinking of sentences. But come to me when I'm in my inner spring and summer and we'll make a date for sure. So it just becomes the foundation of everything.
Yeah. It sounds like it takes like a lot of like pressure off. Well, obviously like you feel your emotions, but takes like the pressure off when you do have those emotions. I think like it depends on the kind of person you are, but I definitely, when you're feeling like that, when you're menstruating or whatever, like you definitely feel like that ultimate pressure to be like up here on your A game because that week aligns with really super important stuff in your life. So like having those combined is, yeah, I get it.
Totally nailed it, Isla. Like it literally is like the word I hear is permission. Like it gives you permission to accept where you are today or in this moment because it's okay that you feel like that. And second, you know that having a cycle means that everything ends and begins. You know, everything comes back around. So if you're bleeding or if you're in your inner winter now, you know that inner spring has to follow, which means that energy is coming.
Yeah.
You know that following inner spring is inner summer, which means that if you're honoring your energy and you're not doing overcommitting, you know that when you get to inner summer, you'll have heaps of space and time and capacity for people. So it's like permission to feel how you feel. And then almost, what's the word that I want? Trust is definitely the word, like trust that it's, you know, it's always flowing, but just like a safety in knowing that, oh, more energetic times are coming. I'm all good. Like I can rest and chill out here knowing I'm supporting myself to be a part of the world when that time comes around.
I feel like it also takes away a little bit of that feeling, like if you are in your inner winter and your partner is kind of wanting to be more sexual and you kind of have that feeling of, oh, is something wrong with me? Like, why do I feel this way? But if you're actually in tune with your seasons and you know, oh, this is why, then it takes the accountability as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can communicate that. Like you can say, oh, it's not you, babe. Like if you're wanting to be intimate, I have the capacity for, you know, a naked hug, or I have a capacity for a massage, or you know, whatever it might be. Like there's still, you know, I suppose it becomes a bit playful and experimental in like, well, what does intimacy look like for us in each season? And that will be different for each woman and each person who's cycling. Like what, because I know like some women are horny as anything when they're on their periods, and some women are like, oh my God, get the fuck away from me. I couldn't think of anything worse. Do you know? So it really, I suppose, you know, you have this brilliant framework of the cycle and the inner seasons, and you learn it. But then what you do is you tailor it to you, and you work out what each of those seasons mean for you. And maybe how I explain one season, once you start working with your cycle, you're like, actually, you know what? I didn't really feel like that then. This is what consistently happens for me. So then you start to apply that framework and you learn you, which is, I mean, the most powerful thing that we could possibly do. Because I was thinking about this as I was getting ready, like, why do taboos exist, and why do we want to start like exposing them and eliminating them? And I think because they hold such power, the topics that we are afraid or not allowed to talk about hold so much power. And my belief is that if girls and women and menstruators from their very first period learnt this information and learnt this wisdom and learnt this tool for connecting to their bodies, we would have such strong, sovereign, autonomous beings who didn't need to refer outside of themselves for advice, for wisdom, for answers about their body, because they would have it. Like they would have it from all their years of connection. So, yeah, I just feel like it's so crucial that this information gets to everybody, really. But anyone with a menstrual cycle, because it's the most empowering thing you can do to learn who you are through directly working with your body, your energy, your emotions, your cycle. And like we said, even if you're not cycling, you still have the capacity to do that.
And it gives you so much confidence as well. Like you see, if there was especially when you're younger, and like having your period is such a big deal, like having your first one, going to PE, like all those little things that now you're confident with. But if you had the capacity at that age to be so confident in why you feel the way you're feeling, like it would just be game changing.
Totally. Think about all like the body image issues that girls are facing. Think about like dangerous sexual behaviors. Think about like pleasure. Like how many girls and women actually know their bodies and what their clitoris is? What's the difference between where the wee comes out and where a penis or a finger or a toy goes? Like how many of us actually understand our own physiology? You know, like, and that stops us, firstly, from experiencing pleasure and having control over the pleasure that we receive. But it also stops us from being able to communicate what we like to others. It stops us from being able to talk about openly our bodies, like, hey, this didn't feel good for me, or something's happening. Like the difference, like the amount of girls and women that don't know that their vulva and their vagina are two different things, or their vagina isn't what's on the outside. Like your vagina is internal structure, your vulva is everything externally. Like we're doing ourselves such a disservice, and society is doing us such a disservice not teaching us these things about ourselves. And our cycle is no different. You know, like keep that information away from girls, women, menstruators. Then by keeping that information away, you're continuing to perpetuate this disempowered narrative and these disempowered women in the world who can't rise up and be like, nah, you know what, that's not good for me, I don't want to do that anymore, or I don't believe what you're saying, like that's not true for me. So kind of when you start to unpack it, you see there's probably a little bit more purpose to why we've just kept lots of these things underground for others, and this information not available to us all. It's powerful.
It's absolutely like all relative, isn't it, when you think about it, from like what you're saying with the menstruation, then even going back to like the basics of when we first had sex, all that sort of thing. Like if you reflect, I'm pretty sure I could ask the majority and reflect on like our personal experience, like it all kind of links in together. Like, yeah, I definitely do wish that I'd known. I don't know how else you'd better prepared for it, but like, yeah, if that sort of like structure was given to us when we're at like a younger age, you wonder how different your experiences might have been, or like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think I'm in touch with my body maybe a bit more now, but maybe not as much as I might think it is. But like, yeah, that's been like, I'm what, 26 years old, so that's years,
Yeah.
like from my first period, and I've been riding whatever wave, not knowing what I feel or what is meant to be right.
Absolutely. And like you had to go and look for that information yourself, Isla. Like that's readily available. And it's like not like you missed the class on it. You're like,
Yeah.
this could be taught to us from and normalized. I think that's also the important thing. Like it could be normalized for us from birth. Like people just our mothers talking about their periods or not hiding their tampons or their reusable undies or whatever it might be, or talk like just hearing about periods and blah 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 blah. It's not just like obviously through learning and reclaiming it for ourselves it's huge, but it doesn't even need to be lessons taught in school. It just needs to be part of our general discourse and conversation around bodies and an openness around that. And I mean the thing I will never forget is I think I was 29 when I learned that you couldn't get pregnant every day of a cycle. I just thought you could get pregnant every day. Like that's how they make it out at school. And if you have sex, you could get pregnant. And I'm like, well, that's actually a lie. And it makes no sense because imagine having a body that constantly had to be prepared for making a baby. Like that's a lot of energy and effort. But how did I get to 29 and have my friend tell me you can't get pregnant every day? I was like, what?
Mhm.
I was in university when I learned that as women you have like a different hole for urine. And I remember my friend, she said to me, we're talking about tampons, and I was like, oh, it's so annoying. Every time you pee, you have to change your tampon. She was like, well, you could just leave it in, like it would be fine. Like you go to the toilet and just like pat it dry or whatever. And in my head, I thought she meant if I peed with a tampon in, it would soak up the pee because I thought it came from the same place. So I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is groundbreaking. Like I can just be walking about peeing. And I thought I'll try it for the first time in the toilet. Thank God. Do you know what I mean? Like I just had no idea. Like you should be taught how to also have your period a little.
Yeah, totally.
Literally, like like tampons, how the fuck are you supposed to know where they go if no one has even, like if you've never looked at your vulva? Like this is another thing. I got into this practice of, it's called pussy gazing. I don't do it all that often now, but I did it for quite a while. A chick called Lacey Haynes kind of came up with it and did workshops. But it's essentially where you get a mirror and you just look at your pussy or your vulva or whatever you want to call it. And the number one thing that women would say to her is like, oh, I didn't know my wee came out of there. I didn't know I had a different hole for my wee. And it's like, well, yeah, if you've never looked,
Yeah.
no.
I know.
Never looked, how would you know where a tampon went? Like the amount of years I went around with a tampon incorrectly inserted, like just kind of in, not really in, and being like, God, this is uncomfortable. How do women do this? It just wasn't right. No one had shown me. Like poor little Ashleigh, she didn't know. She didn't know it.
I had been using pads, and then I was like, I'm fed up of this. And I was like, today's the day. I'm going to wear a tampon. And my mum had been out, and I had read the full pamphlet. Like, and also the pamphlet was quite shocking because it told you about TSS, like toxic shock if you leave it in. And I was like setting an alarm to make sure I wasn't a minute over 8 hours. And like, my mum came in and she was like, looked at like the little applicator in the bin, and she was like, are you wearing a tampon? I was like, yes, like so proud that I had done.
Yes. And I have so much respect for one of my sisters. She just asked my mum, how do I put this in? And I was mortified. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that you're asking mum how to insert a tampon. That is so embarrassing. But really, it was just really smart and clever because she didn't know. And so much respect for her because she didn't walk around for years like I did with a tampon half in, half out, being like, oh, it's not comfortable. But like, how cool if our mums were just, if they were comfortable with their bodies and comfortable to say, yeah, I can show you, or let's get a mirror and you can have a look. I'll like, you know, this is the whole thing. Like we changed this cycle by reclaiming it for ourselves, reclaiming our connection with our body, and then through that we become more comfortable, because it takes time. Like, you don't just learn cycle awareness, or you don't just look at your vulva one time and go, oh yes, sweet, that's all my conditioning, pre-conditioned stuff out the window. Like, it takes a lot to unpack. But once we do that, and in the process of doing that, then we are, again, like I said, circling back, you know, helping our upcoming generations to just have this as a normalized thing. It's not anything different to talking about, I don't know, I talk about going to the toilet, about doing poo, or talking about being sick, or, you know, any bodily functions. Do you know?
Yeah, women's health, I think that's from us starting Gloria and all that sort of thing, like just even looking at the basic stats for like women's health in general is like quite shocking, even just like UK based, not like worldwide sort of thing. I think that really like comes into play with that, like how genuinely important it is to kind of start those kind of topics of conversation, because yeah, it's just not good enough. I think it's what we found, like not good enough.
And if you think about, you know, things like endometriosis, this is huge and affects so many women. And I don't know if this is a global statistic or just Australia. No, I think it is. I went to a lecture in Edinburgh about it. But but it takes women on average 10 years from their first presentation to a health practitioner to actually get a diagnosis and treatment for endometriosis. Now, why is this? Well, because one, we're not taught about our cycles. We're not taught about what's normal and what's not normal. Two, there's this narrative around grinning and bearing period pain. Oh, well, you know, my period was painful, so is yours. I mean, that's coming from generations down. But then it's also societally what you hear. And you just think, periods actually aren't supposed to be painful. Periods are our monthly report card of our overall health. You know, they're the seventh vital sign now, they're being referred to as. They give us so much information about our bodies and our overall health. So if this was taught to us, we'd know, firstly, wow, this amount of pain is not normal. Like, health practitioners also need to be schooled in this. Like, they don't know. GPs, the amount of GPs that have just been like, oh, well,
yeah,
like, that's just how, that's your curse as a woman. It's like, that's your cross to bear. Nah, it's not. Do you know this stuff? We can't advocate for our bodies, and we can't advocate for better, faster identification and treatment. Like, if men had endometriosis, it wouldn't be a thing anymore. Like, we would have a cure.
Yeah.
We would have a cure for it. 100% there'd be a cure. But, you know, like, even, I'm just going to get on high horse for 1 second. The male contraceptive pill, there's been all this studies done on research trials. What came out in the first research trials was that when they used a hormonal-based contraceptive pill for men, they experienced side effects. What do you think happens to us on every contraception that you've given us? But they were okay to pass clinical trials, and those side effects were fine for women to have to grin and bear. So what have they done? They've moved on to a protein-only based contraceptive for men that doesn't produce side effects, which is having great results. Now, firstly, like, amazing. I don't want anyone to have horrible side effects from birth control. But why is it okay for women to experience side effects, but not, do you know? So
it's like the standard of care for men is higher than it is for women, and we just have to kind of suck it up and get on with it because that's how it is.
Exactly. And I think that the more of us, you know, that create platforms like you girls are, that talk about what I'm talking about, that try and demystify and educate about these processes in our bodies, you know, like, cycle awareness is so many things, like, and it has so much to offer you depending on how deep you want to go with it. But in general, if we just look at it as a cycle and what's normal and not normal, like, this needs to be known, because we need to be able to stand up for ourselves and say, hey, this standard of care, like you said, Jess, is just not good enough. and we deserve better. But we can't do that until we know our bodies properly, until we can advocate for ourselves from a place of embodiment and experience and confidence and bodily wisdom. That's why we're still fighting the fight, because not enough of us are aware that this is a problem, pain, whatever else it might be, So, yeah. Okay, I'm off my high.
No, it's so true though, and I think you're right in saying it's so powerful when you know your body, because then if you go to the doctor and they say, oh no, this is part of menstruation, you can say, actually no, I know what my menstruation should feel like, and this isn't part of it. This is something else.
And if we continue to use like the pill, for example, as a band-aid solution for teenage girls, as soon as they're sexually active, you just go on the pill, then what we're doing is we're cutting off that developing connection between that girl and her menstrual cycle and her body, so that when she comes off the pill, say she wants to have a baby or she doesn't want to be on the pill for whatever reason anymore, whatever it is, she doesn't actually have any previous experience to base her knowledge and her wisdom of her body on. She's got nothing, because she's been on contraception for 5, 10, 15. Like, that's many women's experiences of getting pregnant or trying to get pregnant for the first time, is coming off the pill, and they've never had a natural cycle. So, how are you supposed to know what's normal when you've never been allowed to experience what's normal? Or what's normal for you, and compare that to what we know is expected. So
I think that, it's also why it's so frustrating that Ayla and I were talking about it, and it kind of links to what you were saying about women not being able to get pregnant every day of the month versus men being able to pregnate every day all year. So we were like, it doesn't really make sense. Like, if we have a limited period of time where we can fall pregnant, why are we made to feel like the problem and birth control is our responsibility? And it's also compounding, like, we already have more hormones, more kind of cycles and things to deal with. And then actually you put this added layer of additional hormones and disrupting our cycles on top of it, when that could be a cross that the men could bear, actually, because they don't have as many other bodily functions happening at the same time.
Yes, 100%. And I won't, like, the science isn't my area of expertise and something I share, but Elisa Vitti and Lara Bryden are two, Elisa Vitti's American, Lara Bryden is Kiwi, I think, or maybe she's Canadian. Anyway, one of them. They talk specifically about how, firstly, the pill changes the chemistry of your brain, so it actually makes you a different person when you're on it. And Lara Bryden talks about, we do talk about menstruation and our periods like it's the star of the show, but actually ovulation is the star of the show, because when you're ovulating, that's showing that you have a healthy cycle. And when you ovulate, and again, don't quote me because this isn't my science and background and what I've studied, but Lara Bryden says when we ovulate, that's when we produce all of these amazing hormones that are so good for our body, that later down the track, like if we're ovulating every cycle from when we first get our period to when we start menopause and beyond, we have all of these hormones like banked up that are stopping us from experiencing all this different range of health concerns and conditions. I think osteoporosis being one of them. So it's like, by suppressing ovulation or by suppressing our natural cycles, we're actually not just stopping ourselves from getting pregnant, we're actually disrupting our health and our like overall lifelong health. So they're like, oh, I'm 15, I want to have sex and I've got my period. Oh, here, have the pill. It's not really good enough when we know this is scientific evidence now, and you can go and read both of their work. They offer brilliant information about this, but this shouldn't be our band-aid solution, or this shouldn't be our responsibility, because it's impacting more than just, well, it's impacting a lot for what it's stopping, which is getting pregnant. But you could arguably still get pregnant on the pill, and you can also catch STIs and other things if you're having sex without protection because you're on the pill. So it's just such an archaic way of and misinformed, like this misinformation, it's misinformed way of dealing with girls and women. So
we did like a podcast recently, just between me and Jess, kind of like going through STIs, conception, all that sort of thing. And I mean, the basis of it was like, it's quite clear where what we've learned, and the basics, which are like, so like, there's so much misconception, like our education from when we started in school and stuff to like what we're obviously learning now, for just like, oh my God, we spent like 10 years thinking that this was like a normal thing, or this was like a possibility. And then now obviously we're like learning the facts, but it's just like, oh my God, we spent so many years knowing that. And it's really, we're just like, what, we're just two girls in comparison to like so many that probably have learned differently or whatever. But yeah, I think you're totally right when it comes to like the misinformation situation. Like, you don't even know where it came from. So clearly from learning from your peers, or reading online, or
It's
who,
like hearsay, isn't it? Like myths.
yeah, madness.
yeah.
I also
And
I was just gonna say, sometimes I also think when it comes to period care, we're from good families, and if we really needed support or to ask questions, like we could, like, would feel a bit awkward, but it's not like we were bleeding putting toilet roll in our pants. Like, you had the facilities and the materials. But I also think about, like, when you think about kids in your school who are from kind of less privileged backgrounds and maybe don't even have parents who are in tune with them or even really care, like, they need that support in that kind of formal education place to be able to have some sort of responsible guidance, which we just don't have at the moment.
No, and that's such a great point, Jess. One thing that's amazing about Scotland that I wish the rest of the world took on, because Australia is just so backwards about this, but you guys have introduced free, sanitary products in schools and universities, because it is a socioeconomic issue. Because we should, if we're bleeding, like, that's not a choice. Like, we're bleeding because that's our body. Like, we shouldn't then have to fight for access, or have access or not have access to products that support us. And then, the next step is just what you've said. It's like, it's the same with the education and the information that shouldn't just be available to those of us who come from, I don't know, perhaps a more privileged background or a more open family. Like, this should be readily available to anyone who wants to know and understand. And particularly, I'm just going to stand up because my baby's moved and they're hurting me. Don't mind me. Particularly, even around contraception, like, being taught about your body gives you so much power, because you can track your basal body temperature. But even if you don't have a thermometer, like, you can track your cervical mucus, and you can learn. It's so powerful. That's how I got pregnant. Just I knew, like, the mucus aligns with which phase of your menstrual cycle you're in, and there's different mucuses for different levels of fertility. So if you can see, or if you can feel, again, this isn't something that I teach, but this is my personal experience. If you can see or feel, oh yeah, this is fertile mucus, then either I want to make a baby, so let's go, or I don't want to make a baby, so let's use protection. So you don't need the pill. You don't need contraception to be able to stop yourself from falling pregnant.
My friend was on the thermometer one, and I think we're just, like, I told my mum about it, and I was like, that's quite cool, like, I could get my implant taken out. But then she was like, would you really trust it? And I was like, I don't know, like, if I do. And it's that kind of fear, because we've been conditioned to believe that you need 100% protection, even though we know contraception, like, it isn't 100% either. Nothing really is 100%.
Right, exactly. And there's that fear, and again, that level of distrust, like, oh, but how would you know your body? It's like, well, maybe at the moment I don't. Like, maybe if I have an implant, no, I don't know yet. But I would be making a conscious choice to have that out and to learn about my body, so that my reality was, I understood and was empowered around my sexual activity and around my contraception and around my choices. But you're never going to know if you keep the implant in there forever, like this. Not necessarily you, Jess, but you're never going to build that relationship of understanding and trust with your body if you don't give yourself an opportunity do it. And there's so much information out there now to support us to be able to know and feel empowered about our choices. Like, I haven't always known this stuff. I've had to come and learn it, and it's been the most revolutionary practice of my life. So I'm happy to have invested the time. And yeah, if you get your implant taken out, or if you stop taking the pill, don't just go for it straight away. Like, your body might take some time to get a natural cycle back, and a natural cycle that has a rhythm that you're confident in tracking and understanding. You know, like, we're not going to be complacent about things. We're also mature and grown up and realistic. But it's that fear that stops us from making an empowered choice. And I think, you know, if you flip that fear on its head and you say, oh, well, what would love look like, or what would trust look like in this situation? It's like, well, it would look like, for me, giving myself and my body a go at working this out together, like getting to know each other and getting and developing a relationship with like the only home that we have. Like, our body is our home. If we don't know it, how is anyone else supposed to know it? You know? Yeah. And it's you know, I was thinking about this the other day. I share this wisdom and I share this framework, not so I can tell you how to fix your problems, and not so I can tell you the answers about you, but so I can give you the tools and the techniques to know that about yourself. Because I can know this stuff in and out, but I don't know your body. Like, you know your body. You're the biggest informant. You're the wisest person. But yeah, you need to start somewhere, and you need to make a commitment to yourself that this is what you want, and you don't want to keep handing away your power to contraception or to a doctor or to anybody authoritarian or authoritative in your life. Like, you are the power of you if you want to be.
And just kind of on that topic, like, what was your journey? Because like, I guess you weren't always, like you say, in touch with Wombpower and your cycle. So what was your transition from, like, almost your awakening and coming off of contraception and stuff?
Oh, yes, I remember it vividly. In a nutshell, I listened to that podcast with my mentor now, Claire, and that was that first light bulb moment for me, because I had been feeling like a failure. You know, I had been feeling like my body was failing me, and there was something wrong with my body. And that light bulb moment turned it around for me. And that was back in 2016. And I think I had been on and off the pill. I'd been on the pill when I was in relationships, and then off it because I didn't love it. I only was on it for contraception. And then I had a lot of womb problems. You know, like, I had really painful, horrendous periods, and, you know, thought maybe I had endo. I didn't. I had adenomyosis. The gynecologist recommended to put in a Mirena. And I mean, that turned me into a crazy person. I hated that, you know, like, I had it only in for 6 months, and I didn't get a period for 6 months. I completely lost myself, you know, in the emotions, and not having that. I didn't realize how much I actually relied on my period to come to make sense of everything that had happened before, even though I didn't know all those weeks before meant anything. Having my period was still that ending and beginning marker. So I had all that going on, and eventually I got that Mirena taken out after I heard the podcast, and it was just a real slow burn of, like, it took me 18 months for my cycle to return to a regular kind of rhythm. You know, I'd have like 42-day cycles, then 28 days and 33. Like, it was all over the place. And in that time, I was using contraception, like condoms, because I didn't know what was going on with my body then. But, you know, it's just this process of a devotional practice to yourself, a commitment to yourself to want to learn. And I feel like you get wins on the board, you know, where, like, I journal. I'm a journaler, so I will write down how I'm feeling each day and what cycle day I'm on. Some people like to put it in an app. Some people like to fill in a table. You know, there's lots of different ways to track your cycle. But you start to see these patterns, and you start to identify these wins. And you start to get some runs on the board where you're like, oh, hey, this is actually working. You know, like when I did this thing on day 27, I actually felt really good about myself. Or when I started bleeding and I didn't exercise, that actually felt way better in my body than making myself go and do a workout, you know. And it's a slow burn, you know, and you have to show up for yourself. But eventually I cultivated such a beautiful relationship with my body and my cycle that I was like, oh, everybody needs to know this. Like all women, all girls, everyone, like menstruating or not, needs to know this information, because this is serious wisdom that is changing and has changed my life. So, I mean, that's when Wombpower was born. But yeah, it's just like anything. You just got to keep showing up for it, and you have these small wins and these small successes, and that's enough to make you go, yeah, I think there's something in this. Until now, you're like me, and you're like, oh, this is the only practice that you'll ever need. But it's built in. I think that's the beautiful thing about cycle awareness is it's built in. Like we go to yoga, we go to the gym, we attend sound baths, I don't know, whatever your thing is. You're always going somewhere to do something for like a practice for yourself, whereas this already exists within you. You just have to, and it's free. You just have to tune in.
Yeah. And have you found communicating this to like trying to tell like your partner, like were you with him when you first discovered this, or this is like completely when you're by yourself?
Yeah, no, what was I? No, I was in another long-term relationship when I discovered this. And I think I probably just kept it to myself for quite a while because I wasn't familiar with it. You know, I wasn't, and I say this to everyone I work with, like to be able to talk to somebody else about something, you first need to feel comfortable about it with yourself, because it makes communication easier, but it also doesn't derail you if you don't 100% understand what's going on, or you've got someone, you know, because quite often people get quite triggered when you talk about trying to be empowered about your body, and they'll question you like, oh, what does that mean? And like if you're not rooted and grounded in your own experience of it, that can be quite destabilizing, or it can derail you a bit and make you go, oh, maybe this is stupid, you know, I don't know about it. So no, I spent quite a bit of time working it out for myself and exploring it myself, but that's also my process. You know, everyone's different. And when I got to a point where I felt like I had a bit of a hold on what was going on, then I started sharing just with my partner at the time, like, oh, you know, oh, this is the day I am. You know, it's easiest to start talking about your period, really, like, oh, I've got my period today, and I'll probably have a period for like 5 days. Come back to me next week and we'll talk again, or, you know, whatever it might be. But but when I came into my relationship with Angus, who's now my husband, I was so confident in my body. I was so confident in who I was because of my cycle practice. Like it had taught me so much about myself on more than just a physical level, more than just my energy. It had taught me about like my emotional body, my energetic body, how I changed, that I just was like, this is what I do. Like, not as I didn't do it as a business then. I was like, but this is my life. This is how I navigate. So come on board, and I'll
Love her.
Probably it's nice in a way that the business came second, and it's actually like your authentic way of living and your passion that you've then wanted to share and managed to monetize. Like that's great.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important. I mean, I won't sit here and profess that I'm a hugely successful, like in a monetary perspective, businesswoman currently. But you have to have a passion and a connection. For me anyway, actually, I won't say that for everyone, but for a heart-centered business, I need to believe what I'm sharing. And that also, I suppose, speaks to integrity. Like for you to trust me, to work with me, to listen to me, to invest your energy, your time, your money, whatever it might be. Like you have to trust that, like, this is what I do. Like if I wasn't talking to you about it, I'm still doing it. you know, regardless of if you're watching, if I'm posting about it, if I'm sharing stories about it, like whatever, I'm still doing it whether you're here or not. And I think that's really important when you're dealing with working with someone who is going to hold space for you and support you on your own personal journey. You have to trust them. So, and I feel like people can smell a rat, you know. So if you're not really walking your walk, I think people know. So yeah.
I think there's always going to be like, but it's never going to not be a platform for it. You know what I mean? There's never going to not be a space to be able to talk about this, or there's never going to be no one that can relate to it. So you're always going to have someone that's going to be like, oh, and I think if you can help one woman or whoever menstruates feel that little bit more comfortable or something, is like worth everything.
Yeah, we make up 51% of the population. I have to remind myself that all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, like, you know, in these moments of, you know, from a business perspective and a success perspective, I suppose, you know, that freaking out, like, oh my God, there's one other person sharing menstrual cycle awareness that I've heard about. Oh, this is my constant inner dialogue. Oh no, all right, I may as well stop, because who's going to listen to me? And I'm like, actually, 51% of the world are women. Like,
there's so much space. Honestly, we have the exact same. I have that on like a daily, like on Instagram, seeing somebody like kind of, we've not seen anybody doing exactly what we want to do, but like kind of similar. And I'm like, oh God, like they've got 5,000 followers, like what's the point? And then you have to remind yourself, actually, there's enough space for everybody, and every woman that we meet who's in an adjacent kind of business industry are actually so lovely. And when we spoke with Sam from We Wear Boost, who's our previous guest, we spoke a lot about like women actually helping build each other up and then taking back control from the kind of corporate male dominated like world that has become the norm, and we shouldn't be fighting each other, we should be helping each other.
Totally. And like, isn't that just based on the patriarchy? And the patriarchy isn't men. The patriarchy is a structure that, sure, you know, does benefit men, but it's that model where there's only space at the top for one, and then we all have to filter down, and there's varying levels of success available to each of us somewhere under there, because there's always someone at the top, there's always someone at the bottom, and there's room for a particular amount of people at the top. And it's just like, that's just not true. That's not how it is. And that's what puts us, you know, and that's what society is, and the patriarchy has also done. It's like, it's pitted us against one another as women and turned it into, we're competing against one another, when we're not. Like, we don't need to. You know, we all, no one, you know, you'll hear all coaches talk about this, like, but no one is you. Like, no one has your voice, no one has your experiences, nobody has your unique message. As long as you stay true to who you are, there is an audience for you. And as I'm saying this, I'm laughing to myself, because I'm like, I hope you're listening to these words, Ashleigh. There's like, no one is you. So why would there only be one seat at the table for someone talking about cycle awareness, for example? Like, it's not possible, because I even identified at the start, there's people who love sciencey stuff more than energetic, emotional stuff. Well, there you go. There's already 2 more seats at the table. Do you know?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, I think being able to, and this takes a lot of personal accountability, to be able to either engage with others in business and notice when they trigger you, and ask yourself why they trigger you, as opposed to slag them off or be annoyed or, you know, like disengage from their content or whatever it is. Like, ask myself, like, why am I bothered by what that person shared? Or why, you know, is it because of this conditioning that we're fighting for the same spot at the table? And normally it's a yes. Now, whether or not you can continue for that moment in time to engage with that person's content, or if you have to take a loving step back to sort your own shit out, that's fine. But like, we need to stop misconstruing these triggers and these internal narratives about success with the person who is triggering us. Like, it's not their fault. It's our stuff. Like, and then we can just say that about everything on social media, can't we? Like, if someone says something that pisses you off, it pisses you off, so just move along. You know,
Yeah.
it's not that person's fault.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, nice. Well, I guess that's quite a nice point for us to end on. But one feature of the podcast we always have is that our previous guest, the idea is that they write a note to their younger self of something that they wish they had known, and then we tell the next guest what the previous person wrote in the hope that we can kind of show that everybody has the same kind of fears and inner demons. So I'll read out what Sam wrote to herself. So Sam set up the prosthesis, I can never say it, prosthesis breast implant. She's redesigned the whole look and feel of it so that it actually empowers women and it's not a big, heavy, horrible chicken fillet. So Sam said, a note to my younger self, all the people that told you you couldn't do something were wrong. You were right not to listen to them. Make sure you enjoy those times when you get an opportunity to show people what you're capable of and make the most of it when it happens, which is really nice. It's very sweet. Yeah.
Do I now or do I write it to you after?
Write it to us after, and then we'll read it out to the next guest. But it's been so nice to speak to you. I feel really empowered. I was literally thinking in my head, my implant is up not this summer but next summer, and then I'm going to like really think about, rather than just, I've had 3 now, like I just always get it in and out because it's easy, but I'm like, I really need to think about what I actually want to do next and not just follow that narrative.
Yeah, that's awesome, Jess. And I just think, when we start doing that in one area of our life, it gives us, and it starts with our own body, it gives us permission and confidence to do that in all areas of our lives. So where are we accepting stories? Where are we accepting conditioning? Where are we accepting, oh, but that's just what you do? Like, where are you accepting that in your life? And where maybe do you want to question, what do I actually think about that? Yeah. How do I actually feel about that, instead of, oh, that's just what everyone does.
No, totally. I know. I'm exactly the same. My implant's up next month, so it might be starting here. You never know. But no, definitely.
I mean, like, you know what? To finish on, and I think this is a very important note. It's not to bash anyone's choice for choosing to be on contraception. The problem that we're facing is that we're not given the information that we need to make an informed choice. So if we went to our healthcare providers and they genuinely presented us with the risks associated with being on birth control, then we could make an informed choice ourselves about whether or not we were prepared to accept those risks. So I'm all for women being empowered to make their own choices about their contraception, but only if they know the pros and the cons that are associated with that contraception that they're choosing. And this is the problem at the moment. It's just like, just take this, which doesn't actually allow you to make an informed choice. So, if you're listening and you're going, hey, but this is the best thing for me, I know it is. Yeah, then all power to you, like, absolutely. And this practice sounds great, cool, use the moon. But we need to be advocating that girls and women are given the information that they need to make the right choice, the most informed choice available to them.
Yeah, and also presenting them with the other choices. You should be told in the doctor's surgery, these are these other natural methods that you can use. You have to look it out yourself, don't you? It's never brought up.
No one's going to tell you about natural fertility awareness, which is that process of using your temperature and your cervical mucus, because people don't really know about it. And it's scary because, oh my God, you wouldn't need a pharmaceutical company to provide you with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's free.
But it's so informative.
I know, exactly. We wish you the best of luck with the baby. Honestly.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you so
much. Kind of what comes next after. I imagine you've got kind of after baby, your body is like a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it? So
yes,
prepared for that, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I suppose that's the other beauty of cycle awareness. It prepares you for all of these changes, for pregnancy, if you want to get pregnant, for not having your cycle if you're breastfeeding, for for everything. The postpartum period, which can be very intense. Like, it's just, nothing is isolated. We weren't made by mistake. Like, we are made perfectly, and and we're designed perfectly. So the fact that everything is interrelated and it all links, and every process of our body from our first period to our last supports us on our journey through life as women. So, I mean, yeah, to leave you on that note, it's so much more than just syncing your cycle with your life. You know, menstrual cycle awareness is huge. So I feel like if people want to learn more about it, can I say where they could find?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I have two things. I have a free course that's called Uncover, and you can get that at my website. I'm pretty sure it's wombpower.com.au. And that's just a free introduction to all the basic things that you need to know to get started. And if you're just frothing off that, or frothing off what you've heard in the podcast, then I've got an ebook called Unleashed, which is the power of our menstrual cycle. And that goes into all inner seasons, self-care, journal prompts, resources, everything that you would need to understand your cycle and start tracking and knowing yourself and living in alignment with you and your natural ebb and flow. So yeah, you can check those out, and they're still available while I'm pregnant. So sorry, pregnant and a mum. So
we'll definitely be putting links in our Instagram as well, so don't worry, we'll definitely you'll find it.
Well, yeah, if we don't speak to you, good luck with the birth, and hopefully we'll see the little baby pics when they come.
Thank you so much. Well, we're not going to actually take any photos of Bubby, but we will like to share on Instagram. But you might like see feet or the back of the head, hands or something. But yeah, we're so excited. We're planning for a home birth, and we're just wrapped. And I wouldn't be doing that if I hadn't have found this practice either. You know, I wouldn't trust my body in the way that I trust my body now if I hadn't been working with my cycle. So, you know, yeah, it offers you so much. So yeah, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's just love it.
Love being able to link.
Yeah, maybe once the dust is settled and everything is calmed down at home, you can come on and talk about the change in your body post pregnancy, because I think that would be super interesting as well.
I would absolutely love to. I'm just, so inspired and passionate about this. And I feel like this is a whole nother branch of Wombpower opening up through pregnancy and birth. And yeah, when we come back to the UK, whenever that, we'll have to catch up and chat all the finer points of everything that we're doing.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. Have a drink.
Yes. A wine. Oh God, I haven't had a wine in forever.
Well,
girls.
It's lovely to speak to you.
Yeah, you guys. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.